Drift Harbor Station did not spin so much as it shuddered, a metal barnacle clinging to the gravitational wake of the gas giant Neuralis. Outside the reinforced viewport of the comet's tail, the view was a bruised purple and violent gold, the swirling atmosphere of the planet serving as a permanent, oppressive wallpaper. It was Starfall Eve, the one time in the standard orbital year when the diamond rains of the lower atmosphere reflected light up through the cloud deck, making the gas giant sparkle as if it were burning from the inside out. Rhea Sable did not care for the view. She cared about the glasses. She polished a tumbler with a rag that had seen better decades, her movements rhythmic, precise, and entirely at odds with the chaotic thrum of the bar. To a human observer, Rhea might have looked like a woman in a costume, but the ears twitching atop her head tufted with obsidian fur were not synthetic. Neither was the long, sinuous tail that flicked with agitation behind her currently hidden beneath the heavy fabric of her bartender's apron. She was Falari, a stray cat, in a tin can full of dogs and monkeys. "You are brooding again, Rhea," Harlan said as he slid a crate of synthale onto the counter. The station owner was a bear of a man, graying and thick around the middle with a cybernetic left eye that whirred when he focused too hard. "It scares the customers. You look like you are plotting to poison the water supply." "I am not brooding," Rhea said, her voice a low, scratchy contralto that sounded like bowstrings over cello wood. "I am focusing. The atmospheric scrubbers are vibrating at a frequency of 42 hertz. "It is annoying," Harlan grunted. "Only you can hear that. To the rest of us, it just sounds like air." "It sounds like a dying lung," Rhea corrected. She set the glass down. It was spotless. The comet's tail was filling up. Starfall Eve drew them all out of the woodwork, asteroid miners, with dust in their skin creases, freelance pilots with debt in their eyes, and mechanics who smelled of grease and ionizing fluid. They came for the cheap booze, the illusion of company, and occasionally to hear the Catwoman sing. Rhea hated the singing, but it paid for her room, and it kept Harlan from asking questions about why a Falari in her prime was wasting her life mixing drinks in the armpit of the sector. She reached under the counter and pulled out a small ceramic bowl. From a chilled pitcher, she poured a measure of milk, not real milk which cost more than a small ship, but a protein-rich synthetic blend tinted with edible silver dust. "Inventory is tight, Rhea," Harlan warned, though there was no heat in his voice. "Put it on my tab," she replied automatically. She walked out from behind the bar, moving with a fluid grace that made the heavy gravity of the station look like a suggestion rather than a law. She navigated the crowded floor, dodging a drunken Tellurian and a serving drone until she reached the far corner. There, in the shadows, sat a single, empty stool. It was the best seat in the house, offering a clear view of the swirling storm outside, yet secluded enough to be ignored. Rhea placed the bowl of silver milk on the seat of the stool. She adjusted it until it was perfectly centered. "For the strays," she whispered the words, barely audible over the din of the crowd. It was a lie she told Harlan, and a lie she told the regulars. They thought it was a quirk, a Falari superstition about feeding the ghosts of lost travelers. In truth, it was a tombstone. Every drop of silver liquid was an apology to the faces that haunted her sleep, the faces of a station she had failed to hold together, and specifically the small, terrified face of a child whose hand had slipped from hers when the gravity failed. She stood there for a moment, her golden eyes dilating as she forced the memory back into the locked box in her mind. Her ears swiveled, catching the distinct chime of the airlock cycling open at the front of the bar. New arrivals. Rhea turned her tail, lashing once against her calf, and returned to work. The exile, as she called herself in the privacy of her own head, had drinks to pour. The bell above the door jangled a cheerful sound that clashed with the weary atmosphere of the newcomers. Jonas Reed looked like he had been awake for 3 days straight. He wore a flight jacket that had been patched so many times it was more thread than leather, and his face carried the specific, hollowed-out exhaustion of a freelance hauler who was one missed payment away from losing his ship. He was handsome, in a rugged, forgotten sort of way, with dark hair that refused to lay flat, and eyes the color of a stormy sky. But it was the small figure clinging to his hand that drew Ria's attention. The girl could not have been more than 6 years old. She was bundled in a yellow thermal coat that was slightly too big, making her look like a bright, wandering star in the gloom of the bar. She had a mop of curly hair and eyes that were far too alert for the late hour. "Daddy, it smells like purple here," the girl announced. Her voice cut through the low murmur of conversation like a bell. Jonas sighed, steering her away from a table occupied by a group of gamblers. "Mia's smells don't have colors. And keep your voice down, please. We just need to wait until the mechanics finish with the lucky break." "It does smell purple," Mia insisted. "Like electric grapes." Ria, watching from behind the bar, felt a corner of her mouth twitch. The girl was right. The ozone from the recycling units mixed with the artificial berry scent of the cleaning fluid did smell, synesthetically speaking, exactly like purple. Jonas found a small wobbly table near the window. He lifted Mia onto a chair, then collapsed into the seat opposite her, rubbing his temples. He looked like a man holding up the weight of a ceiling that was slowly lowering to crush him. Ria approached them, a datapad in hand. Usually, she let the drones handle the tables, but something about the pair pulled at her. Perhaps it was the exhausted slump of the man's shoulders, or perhaps it was the way the little girl was currently trying to wipe a smudge off the viewport to see the planet better. "We do not serve happy meals," Ria said, her tone dry. Jonas jumped, slightly looking up. When his eyes landed on her, he blinked, taking in the triangular ears and the slit-pupilled eyes. He didn't flinch, which was rare. Most humans did. "Just coffee," Jonas said, his voice raspy. "Black, strong enough to wake the dead. And do you have anything for a kid that isn't radioactive?" "I want the blue juice," Mia chirped, pointing at a neon-colored cocktail a miner was drinking at the next table. "That is hydraulic fluid and ethanol, little one," Ria said, looking down at the child. "It would dissolve your teeth." Mia's eyes went wide. She stared up at Ria, her gaze locking instantly onto the twitching ears. "You have cat ears." "Mia," Jonas warned, his tone mortified. "Don't stare. It's rude." "It is biology," Ria corrected him. She looked back at the girl. "Yes, I have ears. They help me hear when children are asking for things they should not have." Mia giggled. It was a genuine bubbling sound. "Can you wiggle them?" Ria sighed a long exhale through her nose. Without breaking eye contact, she twitched her left ear, then her right independently. Mia gasped, clapping her hands. "Magic." "Muscle control," Ria said. "I will bring warm cacao for the small human, and sludge for the large one." "Thank you," Jonas said, offering a tired, apologetic smile. "She's been a long haul. We're from the Outer Rim. Drift Harbor does not care where you are from, only that your credits are clear," Ria said, turning away before the conversation could become personal. She hated personal things. Personal led to questions, and questions led to the past. As she walked back to the bar, she felt the girl's eyes on her tail. It took a significant amount of willpower not to tuck it between her legs. An hour later, the bar was at capacity. The starfall was beginning in earnest outside. Streaks of brilliant crystalline light were flashing through the clouds of Neuralis, casting strobe light shadows across the patrons' faces. The mood in the room was shifting from weary to raucous. "Sing, Cat," someone shouted from the back. "Sing the one about the moon that broke in half." Ria stiffened. She wiped her hands on her apron. She looked at Harlan, who gave her a nod. 10 minutes, Harlan said. "Then you can take a break." Ria climbed onto the small, raised platform that served as a stage. She adjusted the microphone stand. She did not need instruments. The Filari physiology was unique. Their vocal cords were layered, capable of producing harmonies with a single breath. In the old days on her homeworld, this ability was used to calm seismic tremors, to sing the earth into stability. Now, She uses it to entertain drunks. She closed her eyes and began. The sound that left her throat was haunting a low, thrumming melody that seemed to vibrate in the listener's chest cavity. She sang a folk song from the drift, a ballad about a ship that sailed too close to a black hole. Her voice climbed, splitting into two distinct tones, a high soprano weaving around a deep, grounding bass. The bar went quiet. Even the gamblers paused their dice. Rhea lost herself in the vibration. For a moment she wasn't a bartender. She was a listener again. She could feel the resonant frequency of the station, the hum of the life support, the heartbeat of the reactor, the rhythmic thud of 300 boots on the deck plates. It was a symphony of metal and flesh. She opened her eyes during the bridge of the song and scanned the room. Jonas was watching her, his coffee cup suspended halfway to his mouth, a look of sheer wonder on his face. Mia was asleep, her head resting on her arms on the table, drool pooling on her sleeve. And then it happened. Rhea heard it. It wasn't a sound exactly. It was a discord, a wrong note in the grand composition of the universe. It felt like a needle being driven into the base of her skull. Snap. It was the sound of tension breaking, a frequency that shouldn't exist. Rhea stopped singing. The silence that followed was jarring. She clutched the microphone stand, her knuckles turning white. Her ears flattened against her skull. The song of Drift Harbor had hiccuped. Somewhere deep in the station's superstructure, or perhaps outside in the vacuum itself, the energy currents had twisted. "Hey," a voice yelled. "Don't stop, we paid for the whole song." Rhea blinked the room, rushing back into focus. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. Void tide, her instincts screamed. That was the precursor echo of a void tide. She shook her head. Impossible. Neuralis was a stable sector. The charts said the energy tides were calm for another 50 years. It was just her trauma speaking, just the ghost of her failure haunting her. "Sorry," Rhea mumbled into the mic. Throat dry, she stepped off the stage, her legs feeling like jelly. She needed a drink, a real one. She retreated behind the bar, pouring herself a shot of harsh whiskey. Her hands were shaking. She downed it, letting the burn distract her from the phantom echo in her head. "Ignore it," she told herself. "You are not a listener anymore. You are just a bartender with PTSD. Pour the drinks. Collect the tips. Survive." "That was beautiful," a voice said. Rhea looked up. Jonas was standing at the bar holding his empty mug. He looked less exhausted now, animated by the music. "I've never heard anything like that. Is that traditional Falari?" Rhea poured him a refill of coffee without asking. "It is a funeral dirge, appropriated for entertainment." Jonas looked taken aback. "Oh, I didn't know." "It does not matter," Rhea said, scrubbing a spot on the counter that did not exist. "The tune is catchy." "My daughter loved it," Jonas said softly, before she passed out. "She usually has nightmares on stations. Too much noise. But she went right out when you started." "Falari vocals operate on a delta wave frequency," Rhea said clinically. "It induces sleep in younger mammals. It is a biological defense mechanism. Keep the kittens quiet so predators do not hear them," Jonas chuckled. "Well, whatever it is, thank you. I haven't seen her sleep peacefully in 6 months." Rhea looked over at the table where Mia was snoozing. A strange pang of warmth hit her chest, followed immediately by icy fear. "Don't get attached. Attachments break." "She should not be here," Rhea said sharply. "Ideally." "The ship's broken," Jonas said, his smile fading. "We go where the ship goes. Just me and her." "Where is the mother?" The question slipped out before Rhea could stop it. Jonas's face tightened. The light left his eyes, replaced by a dull, familiar ache. "Gone. 2 years ago. Solar flare accident on the run to Vega." Rhea froze. She knew that pain. She lived in it. "I am sorry. The universe is cruel." "Yeah," Jonas murmured, looking at his coffee. "It is." "Hey, Cat." The shout came from the end of the bar. A large, hulking humanoid with gray, pebbled skin. A Trask slammed his empty tankard down. He was drunk, his slit nostrils flaring. "My glass is empty," Trask snarled. "Stop flirting with the pilot and do your job, animal." The bar went quiet again, but this time, it was an uncomfortable shifting silence. Rhea's ears pinned back. She took a breath, composing her face into a mask of boredom. She moved toward the Trask. "I am coming, and I suggest you lower your volume. The acoustics in here amplify stupidity." The Trask stood up. He was massive, towering over her by 2 feet. "You got a mouth on you, Stray. I don't like Falari. You bring bad luck. Everywhere you go, structures fail. Ships crash. It's in your blood." Rhea's hand tightened on the rag. The accusation was too close to the truth, too close to the secret she carried. "Superstition is the refuge of the weak-minded," Rhea said coldly. "Pay your tab and get out." The Trask growled and reached out, grabbing Rhea's wrist. His grip was like a hydraulic clamp. "Maybe I'll teach you some manners first." Rhea's claws instinctively unsheathed, cutting through the fabric of her gloves. She could dislocate his thumb in 3 movements. She calculated the angle. "Let her go." The voice was not loud, but it was firm. Jonas had stepped away from the bar. He didn't look like a fighter. He looked like a tired dad. But he stood with his feet planted shoulder-width apart. Trask laughed. "Sit down, human. This doesn't concern you." "You're touching the staff," Jonas said calmly, "and you're waking up my kid." At the table, Mia stirred, rubbing her eyes. The Trask sneered and shoved Rhea backward. She caught her balance effortlessly, landing in a crouch, but the insult was delivered. The Trask turned toward Jonas, raising a fist the size of a cinder block. "I said," Rhea's voice cut through the air, vibrating with a low, dangerous growl that rattled the glasses on the shelf. It wasn't human speech. It was a predator's warning. She vaulted over the bar. It was a blur of motion, one hand on the mahogany legs, tucking body flying. She landed between Jonas and the Trask. "You have had 14 ales," Rhea said, looking up at the giant. "Your blood alcohol level is 0.3. Your center of gravity is listening to the left. If you swing at him, you will miss spin and hit your head on the corner of that table. You will bleed. I will not clean it up." The Trask blinked his brain, trying to process the rapid-fire analysis. "Go sleep it off, Rix," Harlan called out from behind the bar, a shotgun-like weapon, now resting casually on the counter. "Rhea's right. You're messy when you bleed." The Trask looked from Rhea's glowing eyes to Harlan's weapon, then to Jonas, who hadn't flinched. He spat on the floor. "Freaks," he muttered, swaying as he turned and stumbled toward the exit. Rhea exhaled, her fur settling. She looked at Jonas. "That was unnecessary. I had the situation controlled." "I know," Jonas said, rubbing the back of his neck. "But force of habit. Are you okay?" Rhea looked at her wrist. It was bruised. "I am fine. You should check on your offspring." Mia was sitting up, watching them with wide, saucer-like eyes. She didn't look scared. She looked fascinated. The rush hour faded as the night deepened into early morning. The station clock read 0200 hours. The bar was largely empty now, save for a few unconscious drunks in the booths and the cleaning drones humming across the floor. Jonas had dozed off in his chair, head tipped back, snoring softly. Rhea was cleaning the tables near them. She moved quietly, collecting empty glasses. She felt a strange exhaustion, not physical but spiritual. The echo of the void tide, or whatever that sound had been, still lingered in her bones, like a low-grade fever. She looked at the empty stool in the corner. The silver milk was untouched, a silent offering to the dead. "Why is that chair sad?" Rhea jumped, nearly dropping a tray. Mia was standing right behind her. The girl moved surprisingly quietly, for a human wearing heavy magnetic boots. She was looking at the stool with the milk bowl. "It is not sad," Rhea said, keeping her voice low so as not to wake Jonas. "It is just empty." "It looks sad," Mia insisted. She walked over to the stool and tried to climb it. It was too high for her. She scrambled, grunting with effort, until she managed to haul herself up onto the seat next to the milk. "Careful," Rhea said, stepping closer instinctively. "Do not spill the offering." "Offering?" Mia looked at the milk. "Is it for a ghost?" Rhea froze. Children had a terrifying way of seeing things adults tried to hide. "In a way, it is for those who cannot be here." Mia nodded solemnly. She swung her legs, her heels thumping lightly against the metal stand. She looked at Rhea, her gaze traveling from the twitching ears down to the tail that was currently wrapped anxiously around Rhea's leg. "My mom can't be here either," Mia said. "She's in the stars now. Daddy says she's part of the light." Rhea felt a lump form in her throat. She knelt down so she was eye level with the girl. "That is a nice thought. The stars are a good place to be." Mia tilted her head. "You smell like cinnamon and oil. My mom smelled like flowers." "I am a mechanic of beverages, little one. I smell like my trade." Mia reached out. Her small, sticky hand hesitated, then touched the fur on Rhea's cheek. Rhea flinched, but she didn't pull away. The touch was shocking. It had been years since anyone had touched her with anything other than violence or lust. This was just curiosity. Innocence. "You're soft," Mia whispered. "I am Filari," Rhea said stiffly. "We are insulated from the cold of space." Mia looked deep into Rhea's eyes. The girl's expression shifted, becoming serious, in a way that belonged to a much older person. She looked at her sleeping father, then back at the Catwoman, who had stood between him and a monster. "Daddy is sad all the time," Mia stated. "He tries to hide it, but I hear him crying in the cockpit when he thinks I'm asleep. He needs help. I need help too. I can't braid my own hair. It always comes out lopsided." Rhea didn't know what to say. Her heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "You will learn. You are clever." Mia took a breath. She asked the question with the casual, devastating directness of a child asking for a glass of water. "Can you be my new mom?" The world stopped. The hum of the station vanished. The distant music cut out. All Rhea could hear was the blood rushing in her ears. She stared at the girl, her mouth opening slightly, but no words came out. It was absurd. It was hilarious. It was the most terrifying thing anyone had ever said to her. "Mia," Jonas had woken up. He scrambled out of his chair, looking horrified. He must have heard the last sentence. His face turned a bright tomato red. "Mia, oh my God," Jonas stammered, rushing over. "You can't just... You don't ask strangers that. I am so sorry." He looked at Rhea, looking like he wanted to open the airlock and jump out without a suit. "She doesn't have a filter. She misses her mother and she gets ideas, and I am so sorry." Rhea stood up slowly. She felt dizzy. The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. "Can you be my new mom?" Rhea looked at the panic in Jonas's eyes and the hopeful, unblinking expectation in Mia's. She let out a short, choked sound that might have been a laugh if it hadn't been so laced with panic. "Moms have to cook vegetables," Rhea said, her voice trembling slightly. "I only know how to burn them." Mia didn't look discouraged. She just smiled. "That's okay. Daddy burns toast. We can learn." Jonas groaned and covered his face with his hands. But Rhea didn't look away from the girl. For the first time in 5 years, the silver bowl on the empty stool felt a little less like a tombstone, and a little more like a question she hadn't dared to ask herself. Outside, the starfall intensified, bathing the bar in a wash of blinding white light, drowning out the shadows where Rhea had been hiding for so long. The silence that stretched across the table was heavy enough to crush the hull of a dreadnought. It was a silence composed of 3 distinct layers. Jonas's sheer mortification, which radiated off him like heat from a dying engine. Rhea's stunned paralysis, her tail frozen in mid-swish, and Mia's utter blinking innocence. The girl sat on her knees on the barstool, hands folded on the table, waiting for an answer to a question that had just rewritten the social contract of the entire evening. Rhea blinked. Her internal systems, usually calibrated to the precise rhythms of the universe, were currently misfiring. She looked at Jonas, who was burying his face in his hands, murmuring something that sounded like a prayer for a sudden hull breach to suck him into the void. Then, she looked back at Mia. "Moms have to cook vegetables," Rhea said finally. Her voice was steady, though her heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "I only know how to burn them." Jonas let out a sound that was half laugh, half groan. He peeked through his fingers. "Mia, we talked about this. You cannot just recruit people. This isn't a crew call." "But she has the ears," Mia said, as if this explained everything. She looked at Rhea with deadly seriousness. "And you smell nice, like warm engines." "That is the smell of old coffee and regret, little one," Rhea said, stepping back and reclaiming her distance. She needed the physical barrier of the table between them. "And your father is right. The position is not open. Besides, I am terrible with small humans. I would likely feed you battery acid by mistake." "I don't think so," Mia said, grabbing her cup of cacao. "You made this, and it's perfect." Jonas sighed, finally lowering his hands. His face was a flushed map of embarrassment. "I am so sorry. Again. She just misses having a feminine presence. And apparently she has decided you are the coolest thing in the sector." "It is the fur," Rhea deflected, picking up the empty tray. "It is a novelty. Like a shiny rock. She will get bored." "I like rocks too," Mia added helpfully. Rhea turned away before the conversation could dig any deeper into the soft tissue of her emotions. "I have customers. Drink your sugar. Do not recruit the bouncer next." But as she walked away, the tip of her tail gave a traitorous little twitch. It was not an annoyance. It was recognition. The lucky break lived up to its name in the ironic sense only. The transport ship required a new hyperdrive, coupling a part that was currently on back order from the core worlds. This meant Jonas and Mia were grounded on Drift Harbor for at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into a routine. Every evening at 1800 hours, the bell above the door of the Comet's tail would jingle. Jonas would walk in, looking slightly more grease-stained than the day before, with Mia trailing behind him like a small, yellow-coated satellite. They took the same table near the window. Jonas ordered the sludge he called coffee. Mia ordered the special milk, which was just standard heated milk that Rhea dusted with a pinch of crushed edible glitter she kept hidden behind the counter. It became a dangerous comfort. On the 4th night, the bar was relatively quiet. A few miners were playing a low-stakes game of cards in the back, and the atmospheric scrubbers were humming a B-flat drone that Rhea found soothing. She was wiping down the counter when she felt a tug on her apron. She looked down. Mia was holding up a piece of flimsy plast. "For you," the girl said. Rhea took the drawing. It was done in crayon, the lines wobbly and enthusiastic. It depicted a stick figure with wild triangular ears and a tail that was longer than its body, standing on what looked like a giant purple circle. "That is adequate anatomy," Rhea said, studying it. "Is this me standing on a grape?" "It's Neuralis," Mia corrected, climbing onto her stool. "You're guarding the station. See, those are the bad storms." She pointed to some angry black scribbles in the corner of the page. "And you are yelling at them to go away." Rhea's fingers tightened on the paper. The image was sharper than the child could know. Yelling at storms, singing to the void. That was what she used to do. That was what she had failed at. "It is very colorful," Rhea said, her voice tight. She hesitated, then taped the drawing to the wall behind the bar, right next to the list of banned drink mixtures. Mia beamed, revealing a missing front tooth. "Do you know why Neuralis has storms?" Rhea asked, leaning her elbows on the counter. She shouldn't engage. She knew she shouldn't. But the curiosity in the girl's eyes was a gravitational pull she couldn't resist. Mia shook her head. "It is because the planet is lonely," Rhea said softly. "It is a gas giant. It has no surface to hold on to. So it spins and spins, trying to catch its own tail, and that makes the winds. And the winds make the diamonds rain down. Like tears, Mia asked. Like sweat, Rhea corrected, keeping it grounded. We are working very hard to stay together. Jonas looked up from his datapad, watching them. His expression was unreadable, soft around the edges. You know a lot about planetary physics for a bartender. I read the labels on the bottles, Rhea lied smoothly. They have trivia facts. She spun away to serve a customer, but the drawing remained on the wall. Over the next few days, it was joined by others. Rhea fighting a space dragon, Rhea flying a ship, Rhea eating a sandwich. The corner of the bar was slowly turning into a shrine to a hero that did not exist. But the past was not a drawing. It was a scar, and scars had a way of aching when the weather changed. That night, Rhea woke up gasping, her sheets tangled around her legs like grasping tentacles. The air in her small quarters was cold, but she was drenched in sweat. The nightmare was always the same. She was back on Station 9. The air smelled of ozone and panic. The void tide was not just a storm. It was a living thing, a violet maw that chewed through the reinforced steel of the habitat ring. She was on the observation deck, her hands pressed against the glass, her mind reaching out to the resonant frequency of the universe, trying to weave a shield of sound to deflect the energy. She had been arrogant. She had thought she could hold it. She was a star listener, one of the elite trained to harmonize with chaos. But the note had slipped. Just one microtone. A sharp where there should have been a flat. The shield shattered. In the dream, she turned and saw the airlock breach. She saw the structural integrity fail. And she saw the child, a boy, no older than Mia, slip from his mother's grip as the decompression took hold. He didn't scream. There was no air to scream with. He just looked at her, his eyes wide and accusing, as he was pulled out into the nothingness. Rhea sat up in bed, her chest heaving. She pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes until sparks danced in her vision. I am sorry, she whispered to the empty room. I am sorry. I am sorry. She reached for the bottle of cheap whiskey on her nightstand and took a long, burning pull. It didn't wash the image away, but it blurred the edges enough to let her breathe. She could not get close to the girl. She could not get close to the pilot. She was a hazard, a walking structural failure. If she let them in, she would eventually break, and they would be the ones sucked out into the dark. The next evening, the Comet's tail was chaotic. A cargo hauler from the Spinward Marches had just docked, bringing with it a crew of rowdy dock workers and a shipment of festival supplies for the upcoming Starfall Zenith. Rhea was moving like a machine, pouring drinks, sliding credits into the register, and breaking up minor disputes with a sharp glare. Jonas and Mia were at their usual table, Jonas picking at a plate of synthetic noodles, while Mia colored in a coloring book. "Heads up!" a voice shouted near the cargo entrance. Rhea looked up, just as a hover pallet malfunctioned. It slammed into a stack of containment crates. The crates were marked Live Cargo Bioluminescent Fauna. The latches snapped, the lid flew off. Suddenly, the air was filled with light. A swarm of Lumith's creatures the size of dinner plates with gossamer wings that glowed neon blue and green erupted from the crate. They were harmless mostly, but they were panicked. They fluttered wildly, diving at the lights, tangling in people's hair, knocking over glasses. The bar erupted into chaos. Patrons were shouting, swatting at the air. A table overturned. One of the Lumiths, confused by the noise, dive-bombed straight toward Mia. Mia screamed, throwing her hands up to cover her face. Rhea did not think. She did not calculate. She simply moved. She vaulted over the bar, clearing the counter in a single fluid leap that defied human mechanics. She landed on the floor, pivoted on one foot, and sprinted. She didn't run like a person. She ran low to the ground, her center of gravity shifting perfectly with every turn. She reached the table, just as the creature swooped down. Rhea didn't sweat it. That would hurt it. Instead, she snatched a napkin from the table, leaped onto the back of Jonas's chair, and caught the creature in midair with a motion so fast it was barely a blur. She landed softly, knees bent to absorb the impact with the glowing moth safely bundled in the cloth. But the rest of the swarm was still panicking. They were bashing themselves against the ceiling lights. Rhea stood on the table. She closed her eyes. She inhaled deeply, expanding her chest, and let out a sound. It wasn't a song. It was a whistle, a high-pitched oscillating tone that sat right on the edge of human hearing. It mimicked the mating call of a queenship Lumith, but amplified. The effect was instantaneous. The chaotic swirling of the creatures stopped. They froze in midair, their wings beating in sync. Then, as Rhea slowly lowered the pitch of her whistle, guiding the sound downward, the creatures followed. They spiraled down from the ceiling in a glowing blue funnel, landing gently on the floor on tables, and eventually clustering around the open crate, where the sound seemed to anchor. The bar was dead silent. Rhea stopped whistling. She opened her eyes. Every single person in the room was staring at her. She realized with a sinking sensation in her stomach that she was standing on top of Jonas's table, holding a glowing moth with her tail puffed out to 3 times its normal size. Rhea said. She stepped down from the table, her movement stiff. She gently placed the captured moth into the crate and slammed the lid shut. "Drinks are half off for the next 10 minutes, she announced loudly to the room. The tension broke. Cheers erupted. The patrons went back to their drinks, happy for the discount and the show. But Jonas was not cheering. He was looking at her with a gaze that was far too sharp. Rhea tried to retreat behind the bar, but Jonas intercepted her near the service hatch. "That wasn't normal," Jonas said quietly. "I have good reflexes," Rhea said, refusing to meet his eyes. "Bartenders need them. Flying bottles." "You cleared a 4-foot counter without touching it," Jonas pressed. "And that whistle, you controlled them. That wasn't just a cat trick, Rhea. They are simple creatures. They respond to frequency." "So do you," Jonas said. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've watched you. The way you listen to the station hum. The way you know an engine is misfiring before the diagnostics do. You're not just a bartender. What are you?" "Some kind of ninja cat," Rhea let out a startled laugh. "Ninja cat, is that your scientific theory?" "I'm working with what I have," Jonas said, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "But seriously, you're overqualified for this place. Why are you here?" Rhea's smile faded. "Because here the only thing I have to control is the level of foam on a beer. Leave it alone, Jonas." "I can't," Jonas said. "Because my daughter thinks you're a superhero. And after seeing that, I'm starting to wonder if she's right." "I am no hero," Rhea said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I am just a stray with good ears. Go back to your ship, pilot." She pushed past him, but the electricity of the moment lingered on her skin. He saw her. Not just the alien features, but her. And that was more terrifying than the void tide. 2 nights later, the station was asleep, but the hangar bay was alive with the sound of cursing. Rhea walked down the gantry, carrying a thermos of coffee and a sandwich. She told herself she was just taking a walk. She told herself she definitely wasn't checking on the man who was currently banging a wrench against the hull of the Lucky Break. "Percussive maintenance is rarely effective on delicate subsystems," Rhea called out. Jonas jumped, banging his head on the landing strut. "Ouch! Damn it! Rhea! What are you doing here? It's 3 a.m. "I brought sustenance," Rhea said, holding up the thermos. "And to tell you that you are tightening the wrong valve. That is the coolant flush, not the hydraulic intake." Jonas slid out from under the ship, wiping grease from his cheek. He looked exhausted, defeated, and ridiculously handsome in the harsh hangar lights. "I knew that. I was just testing it." "Liar," Rhea said, sitting down in a nearby crate. She tossed him the sandwich. "Eat. Your blood sugar is dropping. I can hear your heartbeat fluttering." Jonas unwrapped the sandwich and took a huge bite. You're creepy, you know that, useful, but creepy. I aim for efficiency. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the distant hum of the station's reactor. It was intimate, this quiet space between the noise of the day and the dreams of the night. Elena used to bring me coffee when I worked late, Jonas said suddenly. He didn't look at Rhea. He looked at the ship. She didn't know a wrench from a hydrospanner, but she'd sit there and read the manuals to me just to keep me awake. Rhea looked at her boots. She sounds patient. She was the best of us, Jonas said. When she died, I didn't just lose my wife. I lost my co-pilot. I lost the person who knew which map coordinates were safe. Now I'm just drifting, trying not to crash Mia into a star. You are doing a good job, Rhea said softly. Mia is happy. She is safe. She asks for you, Jonas said. He turned to look at her. Every night. She asks if we can stay here. If you can come with us. Rhea's breath hitched. Jonas. I know, he said, holding up a hand. I know. You're settled here. You have a life. But it's been a long time since I met someone who made the silence feel okay. You don't ask for anything, Rhea. And that makes me want to give you everything. Rhea felt a crack in the wall she had built around her heart. It was a terrifying fissure. She wanted to reach out. She wanted to touch his hand, which was resting on his knee just inches from hers. I cannot go with you, Rhea said, her voice trembling. I am anchored here, by things I cannot explain. Try me, Jonas whispered. I broke something once, Rhea said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Something big. And because of that, I am not allowed to have nice things. I am not allowed to be happy, Jonas. Because if I am happy, I might forget to be vigilant. And if I forget, people die. Jonas reached out and covered her hand with his. His palm was rough, warm, and real. Rhea, everyone breaks things. That doesn't mean you have to live in the wreckage forever. Rhea looked at him. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine it. A life on the lucky break. Mia, drawing in the co-pilot seat. Jonas, smiling. No storms. No guilt. But then she heard it. Thrum. It was louder this time. A discordant vibration that traveled through the floor plates of the hangar, up through the soles of her boots, and rattled her teeth. Rhea yanked her hand away, standing up so fast the crate tipped over. Rhea, Jonas asked, alarmed. Did you hear that? Rhea hissed, her ears swiveling frantically. Hear what the reactor? No. Rhea said, her eyes widening. The song. It skipped a beat. A massive skip. She ran to the hangar viewport. Outside, Neuralis was churning. To a human eye, it looked normal. But to Rhea, the bands of gas were moving in a syncopated rhythm that was all wrong. The colors were too bright, too sharp. The void tide, she whispered. It is not coming in 50 years. It is coming now. The office of Celine Ward smelled of antiseptic and ozone. Celine, the station's safety director, was a woman of sharp angles and even sharper patience. She tapped her stylus against the desk as Rhea spoke. Let me get this straight, Celine said, looking at the Filari over the rim of her glasses. You want me to evacuate the lower levels and raise the shield harmonics to maximum because you heard a bad note. It is not just a note, Rhea pleaded. She was leaning over the desk, her desperation making her sloppy. It is a resonant discord. The gravitational shear of Neuralis is shifting. I can hear the tension in the station's spine. It is like a violin string wound too tight. It is going to snap. Ms. Sable, Celine sighed. I have the best sensor credits I can buy. They show a 0.05% variance in the gravitational field. That is well within safety limits. We are in the middle of starfall. If I raise the shields, I block the view. I kill the tourism revenue. I panic. Panic is better than death, Rhea snapped. I was a listener. I know what this sounds like. You were a listener, Celine corrected coldly. Now you are a bartender with a history of alcohol abuse and a clouded record from Station 9. Yes, I looked you up. You were discharged for psychological instability following the accident. Rhea flinched, as if slapped. That accident happened because I was ignored, like I am being ignored now. I am not ignoring you, Celine said, standing up. I am weighing your intuition against hard data. The data says we are safe. Go back to your bar, Rhea. Pour some drinks. Leave the safety of the station to the professionals. Rhea turned to leave, her fists clenched. As she reached the door, it slid open, revealing a man who looked like he owned the air he breathed. Cade Rowan was handsome, in a sleek, predatory way. He wore a high-collared suit that cost more than the Lucky Break, and on his wrist was a custom-made crystalline interface gauntlet. He was the head of the Harvesting Guild, the man who mined the diamond rains. Director Ward, Cade said smoothly, stepping past Rhea as if she were a piece of furniture. I have the projections for the harvest. It's going to be a record year. Mr. Rowan, Celine nodded. Ms. Sable was just leaving. She thinks the sky is falling. Cade turned, looking Rhea up and down with a smirk that made her fur stand on end. Ah, the singing cat. I heard you spooked the locals with some ghost stories. It is not a story, Rhea growled. You are overloading the grid with your harvesters. If you tap the field while the resonance is unstable, you will trigger a cascade. Cade laughed. It was a dry, dismissive sound. Listen, kitty. I have been mining Neuralis for 10 years. I know how to ride the waves. You stick to the milk saucers and I'll handle the heavy lifting. My grid can handle a little bump in the road. It is not a bump, Rhea said, her voice low. It is a cliff. Then I'll build a bridge, Cade said, turning his back on her. Celine, about those power allocations. Rhea walked out of the office, shaking with rage. They wouldn't listen. They never listened until the hull plates started screaming. Rhea didn't go back to the bar. She went to the observation deck near the station's core. It was deserted. She stood by the viewport watching the swirling violet clouds. The sound was getting louder in her head, a screeching, tearing noise that made her teeth ache. She felt a small hand slip into hers. She looked down. Mia was standing there holding her coloring book. Jonas was a few steps behind, looking concerned. You ran away, Mia said. Daddy said you went to yell at the boss lady. I did, Rhea said, her voice hollow. She did not listen. Why are you scared? Mia asked. She wasn't looking at the view. She was looking at Rhea's face. Rhea knelt down. She couldn't lie to this child, not now. Because a big storm is coming, a very bad one, and the people in charge think it is just a rain shower. Can't you stop it? Mia asked. No, Rhea said. I am just one person, and I am broken. My toy robot broke, Mia said. Daddy fixed it with tape. Maybe you just need tape. Rhea managed a weak smile. This requires more than tape, little one. Mia stepped closer. She placed her hands on Rhea's shoulders, looking her dead in the eye. If you were my mom, would you stop the scary space storms? The question hit Rhea like a physical blow. It wasn't fair. It was a trap. If she said yes, she was making a promise she might die keeping. If she said no, she was admitting she wasn't worthy of the trust they were offering. She looked at Jonas. He wasn't stopping Mia. He was waiting to see if she would run or if she would stand. Rhea closed her eyes. She listened to the station. She heard the laughter in the bar, the hum of the repair drones, the beating of Jonas's heart, the shallow breathing of the child in front of her. She realized then that she had been wrong. She wasn't exiled to Drift Harbor to suffer. She was placed here to be the wall between these people and the dark. She opened her eyes. The golden irises burned with a new intensity. The exile was gone. The listener was waking up. If I were your mom, Rhea whispered, her voice fierce and trembling, I would fight the sky itself to keep you safe. Mia smiled and hugged her around the neck. Okay then, you better get started. Outside, the first bolt of purple lightning struck the station's shield, shaking the floor plates. The alarm klaxons began to wail. The void tide had arrived, and this time, Rhea Sable was not going to run. The klaxons did not start with a whine. They started with a scream. It was a mechanical shriek that tore through the recycled air of Drift Harbor, vibrating the fillings and teeth and rattling the bones of every sentient being on board. In the comet's tail, the glasses Rhea had spent the last hour polishing shattered in unison, exploding into diamond dust across the mahogany counter. Gravity hiccuped. For one terrifying second, up became sideways. The floor tilted 20 degrees to the port side, sending patrons sliding across the room in a tangle of limbs and spilled drinks. Then, just as violently, the artificial gravity slammed back into place, pinning everyone to the deck with the force of a falling anvil. Rhea Sable did not fall. Her Falari physiology, honed by generations of navigating tree cities and zero-gravity temples, adjusted faster than the sensors. She landed in a crouch atop the bar, her claws digging into the wood for purchase. But the physical chaos was nothing compared to the noise in her head. The song of the universe, usually a distant, complex symphony, had become a cacophony of breaking glass and grinding metal. The void tide was not coming. It was here, and it was screaming. Outside the viewport, the view of Neuralis had vanished. In its place was a wall of violet fire. The storm did not look like weather. It looked like a bruise spreading across the cosmos. Tendrils of dark energy lashed against the station's shields, each impact sounding like a hammer striking a bell. Hull integrity dropping to 80%, a frantic voice blared over the general comms. Shield harmonics failing in sectors 3 and 7. Brace for impact. Rhea looked toward the door. Jonas and Mia had left only 10 minutes ago. They were heading for the observation deck near the core Sector 7. "No!" Rhea hissed. The word was not a prayer. It was a denial of reality. She leaped from the bar, ignoring Harlan's shout of warning. She hit the floor, running her movements a blur of kinetic energy. She did not run like a human pounding the ground. She flowed her center of gravity low, her tail acting as a rudder as she cornered the hallway at full speed. The station shuddered again, a violent convulsion that threw sparks from the overhead conduits. People were screaming, running toward the escape pods, but Rhea ran against the tide. She ran toward the danger. She ran toward the sound of the breaking world. Deep in the bowels of the station, in the engineering sublevels, Cade Rowan was smiling. He stood before a massive console that had been jury-rigged into the station's main power grid. Thick, pulsing cables ran from his personal harvesting equipment directly into the core regulator. He watched the readouts on his crystalline interface gauntlet, his eyes reflecting the jagged purple light of the storm. "Beautiful," Cade whispered. "It is raw power. Unlimited." "Sir," his assistant, a young Terran engineer, yelled over the roar of the machinery. "The intake valves are overheating. The station's grid cannot handle this surge. We are drawing too much of the tide into the capacitor rings." "Stabilize it," Cade ordered, not looking away from the screen. "The tide is spiking early. This is a windfall. If we capture this energy, we will be rich enough to buy our own moon. Do not throttle back. Widen the aperture." "But the resonance!" the assistant screamed. "It is causing feedback loops in the structural integrity field. The station is vibrating itself apart." "It will hold," Cade snarled, adjusting a dial on his gauntlet. "Drift Harbor is built like a tank. It can take a little shaking. Just keep the conduit open." He didn't care about the station. He cared about the numbers climbing on his screen. Every second, the void tide lashed the station. His collectors were sucking up terawatts of exotic energy. He was effectively using the station as a lightning rod, and he was the one holding the bottle. But Cade had made a miscalculation. He was an engineer of matter, not of sound. He did not understand that the void tide was not just electricity. It was a frequency. And by forcing it into the station's grid, he had turned Drift Harbor into a giant tuning fork that was about to shatter. Sector 7 was a nightmare of flashing red lights and screaming metal. Jonas Reed clutched Mia's hand so tight, his knuckles were white. They were trapped in Corridor 7 Alpha, a long, glass-walled walkway that ran parallel to the station's spinal column. "Daddy, the floor is biting me!" Mia cried out, stumbling, as the deck plates vibrated violently beneath her boots. "Keep moving, Mia! Don't look at the window!" Jonas shouted, pulling her along. But it was impossible not to look. To their right, the blast shutters had failed to close. The only thing separating them from the vacuum and the raging purple inferno was 3 inches of transparent aluminum. The glass was singing. It emitted a high-pitched whine that drilled into their ears. Crack. A spiderweb fracture appeared in the center of the pane. "Run!" Jonas yelled. He scooped Mia up into his arms, abandoning caution. He sprinted toward the emergency bulkhead at the end of the hall. He slammed his hand against the control panel. "Open, damn you, open!" The panel sparked and fizzled. "Error!" a mechanical voice droned. "Structural lockdown in effect. Clearance code Alpha required." "No, no, no!" Jonas pleaded, hammering the button with his fist. He looked back. The crack in the window was spreading, shooting out branches like a lightning bolt, frozen in glass. The station lurched. Jonas was thrown against the wall, shielding Mia with his body. The lights flickered and died, leaving them illuminated only by the terrifying strobe light flashes of the void tide outside. They were trapped. The air was getting thin. The resonance was shaking the bolts out of the walls. "Daddy," Mia whispered, her face pressed into his flight jacket. "Is the cat lady coming?" Jonas squeezed his eyes shut, tears leaking out. "She can't get here, baby. It's just us." Celine Ward was a woman who prided herself on being unflappable. But as she watched the master status display in Ops turn a uniform bloody red, her hands began to shake. "We have lost containment in the engineering core," an officer reported, his voice cracking. "The spine is destabilizing. If the resonance frequency hits 400 Hz, the station will snap in half." "Cut the power to the harvesters," Celine ordered. "We can't," the officer replied. "Someone has locked us out. It is a hardline override from the inside. Encryption is Rowan Tech." "Cade," Celine spat the name like a curse. "He is killing us for a paycheck." The door to Ops hissed open. Celine turned ready to scream at whoever was foolish enough to interrupt, but the words died in her throat. Rhea Sable stood in the doorway. But it was not the bartender Celine knew. Rhea had discarded her apron. She wore a tight-fitting flight suit that she must have had hidden away. But it was her face that stopped the room. She had removed the beanie hat she always wore. Her triangular ears stood tall and alert, swiveling to track the unseen sounds of the station. Her tail lashed behind her with agitated precision. Her eyes were not just golden. They were glowing with an internal luminescence, the pupils blown wide to take in the energy signatures of the room. She looked alien. She looked dangerous. She looked royal. "Get out of here, Sable," Celine said, though her voice lacked its usual authority. "We are evacuating." "You cannot evacuate," Rhea said. Her voice was different. It echoed slightly, as if she were speaking through a synthesizer. "The docking rings are twisted. Any ship that undocks will be sheared in half by the gravitational shear. The only way out is through." Rhea walked past the security guards, who were too stunned to stop her. She approached the main holographic table. "What are you doing?" Celine demanded, stepping in her path. "That is classified data." "Jonas and Mia are in Sector 7, Rhea said, pointing a clawed finger at the flashing red zone on the map. "The glass is fracturing. They have 3 minutes before explosive decompression." "I know," Celine said, her face pale. "I can't get the doors open. Cade has the system locked down. It is a conductor's protocol." Rhea froze. "A conductor's protocol." "He initiated a system-wide override," Celine explained. "The computer thinks he is the station's primary architect. It won't accept commands from anyone else unless—" Unless his claim is challenged, Rhea finished. She looked at the map, the core, the spine. Cade was there. You can't go down there, Celine said, realizing what Rhea was thinking. The radiation levels near the core are lethal, and Cade has armed the defense turrets. Rhea turned to Celine. She reached up and tapped the side of her own head. I do not need a computer to talk to the station director. I am Filari. I am a listener. And right now this station is crying for help. She grabbed a portable interface unit from the table and clipped it to her belt. Open the maintenance shaft to the spine, Rhea ordered. Rhea, Celine warned. If you go out on the spine during a void tide, the resonance will boil your blood. You will die. Rhea looked at the red dot on the map where Mia and Jonas were huddled. She remembered the bowl of milk. She remembered the drawing on the wall. She remembered the promise. Then I will die a mother, Rhea said softly. Open the door. Celine stared at her for a heartbeat, then nodded. She hit the release command. Godspeed, listener. The spine of Drift Harbor was a marvel of engineering and a death trap. It was a crystalline bridge, translucent and narrow, that suspended directly over the station's fusion core. Above it was the vast vaulted ceiling of the central spoke, which was currently transparent to the storm outside. Below, it was the blinding white sun of the reactor. Rhea stepped onto the spine. The air crackled with static. The gravity here was fluid, shifting with the waves of the void tide. At the center of the bridge, standing on the primary control platform, was Cade Rowan. He looked like a god of chaos. The energy from his harvester cables arced around him, forming a cage of lightning. He saw Rhea and laughed, his voice amplified by his suit's speakers. The bartender, Cade shouted over the roar of the storm. Did you come to bring me a drink, or did you come to watch me rewrite history? I came to shut you up, Rhea shouted back. She didn't need a microphone. She pitched her voice to cut through the ambient noise, using the station's own acoustics to carry her words. Disconnect the harvesters. Cade, you are tearing the hull apart. I am strengthening it, Cade yelled. I am the conductor now. The system obeys me. The system is bleeding. Rhea sprinted forward. Warning, the station's AI boomed, its voice distorted. Conductor challenge initiated. 2 active inputs detected. Priority conflict. Commencing dual protocol. The lights on the spine turned from red to a blinding arena white. A force field shimmered into existence around the bridge, locking them in. This was the conductor's duel, an ancient dramatic safety feature designed by the station's original architects. If 2 operators claimed master control during a crisis, the system would lock out all external commands and force them to manually synchronize the core. Or in this case, fight for the interface key. You want a duel, Cade sneered. He tapped his gauntlet. I have a Class 4 exo-rig and magnetic stabilization. You have a jumpsuit and a tail. Go home, stray. Cade raised his hand. A pulse of gravity slammed into the bridge. Rhea didn't brace. She flowed. As the gravity shifted sideways, she leaped, running along the vertical wall of the force field, as if it were the floor. She pushed off, twisting in midair, and landed behind Cade. She struck. It was a precise, open-palm strike, aimed at his elbow joint, designed to numb the nerve. But Cade's suit was shielded. A shockwave of energy blasted Rhea backward. She skidded across the crystal floor, her claws screeching as she fought to stop herself from sliding off the edge into the reactor burn below. Physics, darling, Cade laughed. He swung a heavy wrench tool that hummed with kinetic energy. Mass times acceleration equals a dead cat. He brought the weapon down. Rhea rolled the metal, smashing into the crystal, where her head had been a microsecond before. Shards of crystal sprayed into the air. Rhea scrambled up, breathless. The noise of the void tide was deafening here. It wasn't just noise anymore. It was pain. Every crash of the storm against the shields felt like a physical blow to her sensitive ears. She needed to focus. She couldn't outmuscle him. She had to outlisten him. She closed her eyes for a split second, filtering out the chaos. She found the rhythm of Cade's suit, the hum of his magnetic boots. Thump hiss. Thump hiss. Cade charged again. He activated his boots, anchoring himself, and threw a gravity punch, a condensed wave of force. Rhea didn't dodge away. She dodged in. She slid under the blast, sliding between his legs. As she passed, she slapped her resonance gloves against his knee actuators. She didn't hit them. She sang into them. A short, sharp burst of sonic disruption. The actuators whined and locked. Cade stumbled his knee, seizing up. "You little pest!" Cade roared. He spun around, swinging the wrench wildly. Rhea leaped onto the railing of the bridge, balancing on a beam no wider than her foot. The drop below was a kilometer of fire. The storm above was a kilometer of ice. She stood between them, a silhouette against the apocalypse. "You cannot control the tide, Cade," Rhea shouted. "It is not electricity. It is an emotion. It is the universe screaming. You have to listen to it, not shackle it." "I don't listen to rocks," Cade yelled. He slammed his fist into the control pillar. Gravity invert. The world flipped. The artificial gravity reversed instantly. Rhea fell up. She flailed, grabbing onto the railing with one hand as her body was yanked toward the ceiling. Cade, anchored by his magnetic boots, stayed planted on the bridge, laughing upside down. "Go, Cat Mom!" The voice came from the overhead speakers. It was small, terrified, and piercingly loud. Rhea froze. Cade froze. "This is not a sports match, Mia." Jonas's voice barked over the comms, sounding frantic. "Get off the button." "But she's winning! Kick him in the diodes!" Mia yelled back. A burst of static followed, but the moment hung in the air. Rhea looked down or up at Cade. The absurdity of it cut through the terror. A smile, grim and sharp, touched her lips. "You heard the child," Rhea muttered. "I will haunt your toolbox if I die, Cade." She swung her body using the momentum of the reversed gravity. She wasn't falling anymore. She was diving toward the ceiling. She kicked off a support strut, turning herself into a projectile. "Gravity normalizes," Cade screamed, realizing his mistake. He hit the button to slam her back down. Gravity returned to normal. Rhea dropped like a stone from the ceiling. But she was ready. She twisted in the air, correcting her orientation. She didn't aim for the floor. She aimed for Cade. She landed on his shoulders. The impact drove him to his knees. Rhea wrapped her legs around his helmet, blinding him. She grabbed his wrist, the one with the interface gauntlet. "Get off!" Cade shrieked, thrashing. He backed up, ramming his back against the railing, trying to crush her. Rhea gasped as the metal dug into her spine, but she didn't let go. She pressed her hand against the crystal face of his gauntlet. "You want to be the conductor," Rhea hissed into his audio pickup. "Then you need to hear the music." She closed her eyes and pushed. She didn't use force. She used her gift. She took the screaming agony of the station, the buckling metal of Sector 7, the terrified heartbeats of 3,000 people, the rage of the void tide itself, and she channeled it all through her hand directly into Cade's neural interface. She made him feel it. Cade gasped. His eyes rolled back. For the first time, he didn't see numbers. He felt the crushing weight of the hull. He felt the air leaving Jonas and Mia's lungs. He felt the sheer, indifferent malice of the storm he was trying to rob. "It's too loud," Cade screamed, clawing at his own helmet. "Stop it, it's too loud." "It is the sound of your ambition," Rhea said. "It is the sound of them dying." Cade broke. He ripped the gauntlet off his wrist and threw it away as if it were burning him. "Take it," he sobbed, collapsing to the deck. "Just make it stop." The duel ended. The force field dropped. Rhea slid off Cade's shoulders. She was trembling, blood trickling from her nose. She looked at Cade, who was curled in a fetal position, sobbing. She could kick him off the bridge. It would be easy. A simple nudge and he would fall into the reactor. He deserved it. But then she heard Mia's voice in her head. "Can you be my new mom? Moms didn't murder. Moms are protected." Rhea grabbed Cade by the collar and dragged him away from the edge, shoving him toward the safety of the airlock. If you want power, Rhea said, her voice raspy, but clear, start by not killing everyone you stand on. She turned back to the console. The gauntlet lay on the floor. She didn't put it on. She didn't need it. She placed her bare hands on the crystalline surface of the master control. Okay, Rhea whispered to the station. Okay, old girl. I am listening. Let's change the tune. She closed her eyes and began to sing. It was not a song of words. It was a song of pure resonance, a low, throbbing hum that started in her chest and traveled down her arms into the station's grid. She found the frequency of the void tide, a chaotic, jagged violet note. And she didn't try to block it. She didn't try to fight it. She harmonized with it. She sang a counternote, a perfect inversion of the storm's frequency. On the screens, Selene watched in disbelief as the red lines began to turn green. She is phasing the station out of sync with the storm. She is making us intangible to energy. But the feedback, the officer whispered. Her body is the conduit. It will burn her out. On the spine, Rhea arched her back, screaming silently as the energy poured through her. Her veins glowed with a blinding white light. The fur on her arms singed. The smell of ozone and burning ozone filled the air. She could feel Sector 7. She could feel the glass holding. She could feel Jonas and Mia. Hold on, she projected the thought. Just a little longer. She pushed harder. She poured every drop of her life force, every year of exile, every drop of spilled milk, every regret into the song. The void tide roared one last time, a frustrated beast denied its meal, and then it slipped. The storm slid around the station like water around a smooth stone. The shaking stopped. The gravity stabilized. The silence that followed was louder than the storm. Rhea opened her eyes. The violet fire outside was gone, replaced by the calm, indifferent stars. Safe, she whispered. Then the light in her eyes faded. Her legs gave out. She didn't fall gracefully this time. She crumpled like a puppet with cut strings, hitting the crystal floor of the spine with a dull thud. Rhea, Jonas's voice screamed over the comms. Rhea, answer me. But there was no answer. Only the soft, rhythmic hum of the reactor and the stillness of a cat who had used up one of her lives. The silence in the comet's tail was usually the comfortable kind, the lull between songs, the quiet clinking of glass on glass, the hum of the atmospheric scrubbers. But for the last 3 days the silence had been heavy, suffocating, and wet with the weight of unshed tears. Harlan wiped down the counter, his movements slow and lacking their usual rhythmic vigor. His cybernetic eye whirred softly, focusing on the empty stool at the far end of the bar. It had become a shrine. On the seat sat a small ceramic bowl, filled with silver-dusted milk. It had gone sour hours ago, but no one had the heart to pour it out. Next to it was a framed holograph of Rhea, taken without her permission by a drunk tourist months ago. In the image, she was scowling at a spilled drink, her ears flattened in annoyance. It was the most alive thing in the room. You should change the milk, Harlan, a small voice said. She won't like it if it is chunky. Harlan looked down. Mia was sitting on the floor near the jukebox, her knees pulled up to her chest. She was wearing her yellow coat, though the environmental controls were set to a comfortable 22 degrees. She looked smaller than usual, her curly hair a chaotic halo around a face that refused to cry. I will change it in a bit, kid, Harlan rumbled. Where is your dad? Repairing the lucky break, Mia said, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. He says he is fixing the landing struts, but he is just sitting in the cargo bay staring at a wrench. Harlan sighed a sound that rattled deep in his chest. He is grieving Mia. We all are. What Rhea did with the energy she channeled, no biological form could survive that. Not even a Falari. She is not dead, Mia said. Her voice was flat, matter-of-fact. She didn't look up. Mia, Harlan said gently, coming around the bar to kneel beside her. I know you liked her. We all did. She was family. But we saw the readings. Her vital signs flatlined on the spine. The medic said, "The medics are stupid," Mia interrupted, finally looking at him. Her eyes were dry and fierce. "Cats have 9 lives. Everyone knows that. She just used one. She has 8 left." "That is a story, Mia," Harlan said, his heart breaking for the girl. "It is a fairy tale." "It is biology," Mia insisted, parroting Ria's favorite word. "She told me. She said Falari are built to last. You will see. She is just sleeping." The door to the bar hissed open. The room went quiet as heads turned expecting another mourner. Instead, Jonas Reed stumbled in. He looked like a man who had gone 12 rounds with a gravity well and lost. His eyes were red-rimmed, his jacket stained with grease, and his hands were shaking. But he wasn't crying. He was grinning. A manic, terrified, hopeful grin. "Harlan!" Jonas croaked, his voice cracking. "Get the good stuff. The bottle from the top shelf. The one you save for peace treaties and weddings." "Jonas," Harlan stood up. "What is it?" Jonas looked at Mia, then at Harlan. He took a shuddering breath. She woke up. The medical bay of Drift Harbor was usually a place of sterile white noise and the smell of antiseptic. Today, it smelled of burnt ozone and singed fur. Ria Sable opened her eyes. The first thing she felt was pain. It wasn't localized. It was a symphony of agony that sang in every nerve ending, every capillary, every strand of DNA. It felt as though her body had been disassembled, scrubbed with steel wool, and put back together by a mechanic who had left a few screws loose. The second thing she felt was sound. It was overwhelming. The beep of the monitor sounded like a hammer striking an anvil. The hum of the lights sounded like a swarm of angry hornets. The breathing of the person standing next to her bed sounded like a gale force wind. "Too loud," Ria rasped. Her voice sounded like gravel grinding together. "Dim the sensors," a sharp voice ordered. Her auditory cortex is raw. She is hearing the electricity in the walls. The lights softened. The beeping became a dull throb. Ria blinked, her vision slowly clearing. She was lying in a biobed hooked up to more tubes than she could count. Her body felt heavy, anchored to the mattress by a gravity that felt 10 times stronger than usual. She turned her head. It took a supreme effort. Celine Ward was standing there, looking exhausted but professional. Next to her was Dr. Eris, the station's chief medical officer. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Ms. Sable," Celine said. She didn't smile, but the tension in her shoulders dropped 2 inches. "You gave us quite a scare. And by scare, I mean you broke 3 of my heart rate monitors." "Did the station hold?" Ria asked. Her throat felt like she had swallowed a handful of glass. "The station is fine," Celine said. "Because of you. The void tide passed. We have some structural stress fractures in Sector 7, and the spine needs a complete overhaul, but we are alive. All 3,412 of us." Ria closed her eyes, a wave of relief washing over her that was more potent than any painkiller. "Jonas, Mia." "They are in the waiting room," Dr. Eris said gently. "They have been there for 4 days. The little one refused to leave until we threatened to sedate her." 4 days, Ria's eyes snapped open. "I have been out for 4 days. "You were dead for 3 minutes, Dr. Eris corrected. He tapped a holographic chart at the foot of the bed. "Clinically speaking, your heart stopped, your brain activity ceased. But then, well, your physiology is remarkable." "The reset," Ria whispered. "Is that what you call it?" The doctor looked fascinated. "Your cells underwent a rapid, violent regeneration. It was like watching a forest grow back after a fire in fast forward. It consumed a massive amount of caloric energy. We have been pumping nutrient paste into you, but you are going to be hungry." Ria tried to sit up. A sharp, stinging pain flared on the side of her neck. She reached up her fingers, brushing against a bandage. "Careful," Celine warned. "You have a scar. It looks like a lightning bolt. It glows slightly when you get agitated. Rhea touched her ears. The tips were sensitive, the fur shorter, singed away by the energy of the tide. I lost a life, Rhea murmured. It was an old Falari saying usually meant metaphorically. To lose a life meant to survive something that should have killed you, leaving a part of your soul behind in the process. Well, whatever you lost, you kept the important parts, Celine said. She stepped closer, her voice lowering. Rhea, what you did on the spine, no one has ever done that. You didn't just deflect the tide. You harmonized with it. You sang it to sleep. I just listened, Rhea said, feeling a sudden wave of exhaustion. It was screaming. I just screamed back. The door slid open. Rhea braced herself, expecting noise. But Jonas and Mia entered quietly, as if they were entering a church. Jonas looked wrecked. He hadn't shaved in days and his eyes were dark hollows. But when he saw her sitting up, the light that came into his face was bright enough to outshine the medical lamps. Hi, Jonas whispered. Hi, Rhea croaked. Mia didn't say anything. She walked up to the bed, reached out and poked Rhea's leg. Ouch, Rhea said, though it didn't hurt. See, Mia turned to Celine. I told you, 8 lives left. Then, she climbed onto the bed and buried her face in Rhea's chest, sobbing so hard, her small body shook the frame. Rhea froze for a second, then her arms moved instinctively, wrapping around the child. She buried her nose in Mia's hair, smelling the familiar scent of shampoo and engine grease. Jonas stepped forward, covering Rhea's hand with his own, his forehead resting against the rail of the bed. I thought, Jonas's voice broke. I thought I'd have to tell her I thought I lost you. I am hard to kill, pilot, Rhea whispered, leaning her head against his hand. I have a very stubborn streak. Recovery was slow. It was not a montage. It was a grind. For the first week, Rhea had to wear noise-canceling headphones, because the sound of a spoon dropping in the mess hall sounded like a gunshot. Her body ached in new and creative ways. The scar on her neck, a jagged line of pearlescent white skin that traced the path of her jugular, itched constantly. But the hardest part was facing Drift Harbor. The first time she left the medical bay, she was in a hover chair pushed by Jonas. She had pulled her beanie cap low, trying to hide her singed ears, trying to hide the alien nature that had saved them all. They rolled into the comet's tail. The bar went silent. Rhea shrank back, gripping the armrests. She expected fear. She expected the freak whispers. She expected them to remember the glowing monster on the spine, the creature that had channeled lightning. Instead, a miner at the front table stood up. It was a slow, deliberate movement. He took off his cap and pressed it to his chest. Then another stood, and another. Harlan stopped cleaning a glass. He walked out from behind the bar, approached the wheelchair, and placed a tall, frosted glass on the table in front of her. The drink was layered purple at the bottom, shifting to gold at the top with a rim of silver sugar. What is this? Rhea asked, her voice trembling. It is called Sable's Second Life, Harlan announced to the room. 1 part Neuralis brandy, 2 parts fortitude, and a dash of hot sauce. Because it kicks like a mule and leaves a mark. A ripple of laughter went through the room. It was a warm laugh. To the spine singer, someone shouted from the back. To the spine singer, the room roared back, raising their glasses. Rhea looked at them. She looked at the miner who had once called her a stray. He nodded at her, a gesture of profound respect. She looked at the Trask she had almost fought. He was raising a tankard in a silent toast. Slowly, Rhea reached up and pulled the beanie off her head. Her ears, still healing, twitched in the open air. Her tail uncurled from around her waist. She sat up straighter. It needs more hot sauce, Rhea said, taking a sip. The bar cheered. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't a pet. She was one of them. Not everyone got off so easily. Cade Rowan was serving his sentence not in a brig, but in a jumpsuit. The community council, led by Celine, had decided that locking Cade up was a waste of resources. He was an engineer, and the station was broken. So his punishment was to fix everything he had nearly destroyed. Rhea found him in Sector 7, 3 weeks later. She was walking with a cane now, her strength returning though she still tired easily. Cade was on his knees, welding a patch onto the deck plating. He looked thinner. The arrogant sneer was gone, replaced by the grimace of a man who had been working 18-hour shifts for zero pay. He stopped when he saw her boots. He looked up, flipped his welding visor, and wiped sweat from his forehead. "Sable," Cade grunted. "Rowan," Rhea replied coolly. "You missed a spot on that seam. If the pressure drops, that weld will blow." Cade looked at the seam, then back at her. He didn't argue. He just nodded and fired up the torch again. "Right. Thanks." Rhea watched him for a moment. "You are using the wrong frequency for the structural bonder. You need to modulate it to 40 Hz. It bonds better with the old metal." Cade paused. He adjusted the setting on his tool. 40 Hz. Got it. He worked in silence for a minute, then stopped again. He didn't look at her. He looked at the sparks dying on the floor. "I had the math right," Cade said quietly. "The capacity of the capacitor rings the flow rate. The math was perfect. I almost had it under control. Almost." "You calculated the energy," Rhea said, leaning on her cane. "You forgot to calculate the song. The universe is not a battery, Cade. It is a living thing. You tried to put a leash on a hurricane." "Yeah," Cade let out a bitter laugh. "Well, I guess I know what the hurricane sounds like now. It sounds like screaming." "It sounds like us," Rhea corrected. "That was what you heard. That was us screaming." Cade finally looked at her. His eyes were haunted. The duel had broken his ego, but it had given him something else, a conscience. It was a small, fragile thing, but it was there. "I'm sorry," Cade said. It was stiff, awkward, and clearly painful for him to say. "About almost killing everyone." "Work on your apology," Rhea said, turning to walk away. "It needs more feeling. But your welding is improving. Keep at it, engineer." As she walked away, she heard the torch spark up again, modulated to exactly 40 Hz. Domesticity was a strange new planet, and Jonas Reed was a terrible tour guide. "It is interesting," Rhea said, staring at the bowl placed in front of her. They were in Jonas's quarters on the Lucky Break. It was a small space cluttered with flight manuals and Mia's toys, but it was warm. Jonas had insisted on cooking dinner to celebrate Rhea being cleared for light duty. "It's stew," Jonas said proudly. "My grandmother's recipe. Well, an approximation. I substituted the beef for textured protein and the potatoes for well. I don't know what that root vegetable is, but the vendor said it wasn't poisonous." Rhea took a spoonful. She chewed. She swallowed. She repressed a shudder. "It has a very distinctive texture," Rhea said diplomatically, "like chewing on a seatbelt." "It's that bad," Jonas's face fell. "It is terrible," Rhea admitted, pushing the bowl away. "You are a magnificent pilot, Jonas. You are a good father. But you are a hazard in the kitchen. I am revoking your cooking privileges before you accidentally create a biological weapon." Jonas laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Okay, fair. Take out." "Take out," Rhea agreed. But neither of them moved to order. The laughter faded into a comfortable silence. Jonas reached across the small table and took Rhea's hand. His thumb traced the scars on her knuckles, remnants of the duel on the spine. "You scared me, Rhea," Jonas said softly. "When the comms went dead, when I saw you lying on that bridge, I felt like the airlock had opened." "I am sorry," Rhea said, looking at their joined hands, her dark fur against his pale skin. "I did not mean to leave." "I know," Jonas said, "but it made me realize something. I've been scared for a long time. Scared of losing Elena. Scared of failing Mia. Scared of letting anyone else in because, well, because everyone leaves eventually." "It is the nature of entropy," Rhea whispered. "Things fall apart." "But things also come together," Jonas countered. He looked into her golden eyes. You came together. You rebuilt yourself. And you rebuilt us, Rhea. Mia hasn't had a nightmare since the duel. She tells everyone her mom is a superhero who eats lightning. Rhea smiled, a genuine soft smile that reached her eyes. She exaggerates. She loves you, Jonas said. And I'm getting there. I think I'm already there. I love you, Rhea. The words hung in the air, heavier than gravity, but lighter than air. Rhea's breath hitched. She had spent 5 years punishing herself, convincing herself she was a pariah, a danger, a mistake. She thought love was a luxury for people who hadn't broken worlds. I am a Falari, Rhea said, her voice trembling. I have claws. I have baggage. I have a history that will always haunt me. I am not a safe bet, Jonas. I'm a freelance pilot flying a bucket of bolts, Jonas smiled, squeezing her hand. I don't do safe bets. I will do the right thing. Rhea leaned forward. Jonas met her halfway. The kiss was gentle tasting of terrible stew and hope. It wasn't a cinematic explosion. It was a grounding. It was the feeling of landing gear locking into place after a long, turbulent flight. Okay, Rhea whispered against his lips. Okay. A week later, the question came back. It was late. The three of them were sitting on the observation deck of the station, the safe one, far away from Sector 7. The view of Neuralis was calm, now the storms having subsided into lazy swirls of pastel violet and cream. Mia was sitting between them, swinging her legs. She was holding a cup of hot chocolate, blowing on the steam. Rhea, Mia asked. Yes, little one. When you were dead, Mia started casually, as if asking about the weather. Did you see my old mom? Jonas stiffened. Rhea placed a hand on his arm to calm him. I did not, Rhea said honestly. It was dark, but it was not scary. It was just quiet, like the silence between tracks on a playlist. Mia nodded, processing this. Okay, that's good. She probably was busy. She has a lot of stars to polish. Mia took a sip of her chocolate, then looked up at Rhea with that piercing, soul-stripping gaze. If you died up there, Mia asked, would you still want to be my new mom? Or would you quit? Rhea felt a lump form in her throat. She looked at the scar on her arm, then at the girl who had pulled her back from the edge of despair, with a simple question. Mia, Rhea said, her voice thick with emotion. Being your mom, it is not a job I can quit. It is not like being a bartender. It is written in my bones now. She reached out and tucked a curl of hair behind Mia's ear. Even if I died, Rhea said fiercely, I think I would still try to watch over you. I would argue with the universe until it let me come back as a ghost. Or a very noisy wind. Or a cat that sits on your chest and purrs until you wake up. Mia giggled. You would be a ghost cat. I would be the most annoying ghost cat in the galaxy, Rhea promised. I would knock things off your shelf if you didn't eat your vegetables. Jonas wiped his eyes, letting out a wet chuckle. That's a very demanding job description, Rhea. Haunting us from the afterlife. Someone has to keep you two in line, Rhea said, bumping his shoulder with hers. Mia leaned her head on Rhea's shoulder. Okay, you can be my mom, even if you're a ghost, but try not to die again. It made Daddy cry really ugly. Hey, Jonas protested. I cried manly, dignified tears. You sounded like a leaking pipe, Rhea confirmed. They sat there for a long time, the human, the pilot, and the Falari watching the planet spin. It was an imperfect family cobbled together from wreckage and spare parts, but it held. It was airtight. Drift Harbor was changing. You could feel it in the air. The fear of the Falari had evaporated, replaced by a strange sort of reverence. Rhea couldn't walk down the promenade without someone stopping her to shake her hand or ask for advice. Ms. Sable, a young pilot, asked her near the docking bays one morning. I'm charting a course through the debris field near the rings. The nav computer says go left, but the harmonics feel choppy. What do you think? Rhea closed her eyes for a second, listening to the distant hum of the planet. The computer is reading the magnetic interference, but the resonance is smoother on the polar vector. Go high. Ride the upper thermal. Thanks, Spine Singer. The pilot grinned and ran off. Rhea shook her head smiling. Spine Singer? I sound like a comic book character. You are a comic book character, Harlan said, walking up beside her with a crate of supplies. The kids in the station school are trading cards for you. There is a rare holographic one where your eyes glow. It trades for 50 credits. That is ridiculous, Rhea laughed. I should demand royalties. You have enough payment, Harlan said, nodding toward the entrance of the comet's tail. Mia was there standing on a crate, telling a group of other station children about the duel. She was waving her arms wildly. And then, Mia shouted, the bad man tried to flip gravity, but my mom, she's a cat, you know, she just flipped with it. She grabbed the lightning bolt and threw it back at him, zap, and then she roared like a tiger. She did not roar, Rhea muttered to Harlan. I harmonized. Let the kid have her story, Harlan grinned. It is a good story. Rhea watched them. She watched Mia being the center of attention, confident and safe. She watched Jonas inside the bar, fixing a loose hinge on the door, looking up every few seconds to check on them. She realized then that the exile was dead. That version of Rhea Sable, the one who hid in the dark, who punished herself for surviving, had died on the spine. The woman standing here now was someone else. She was scared. She was older. She had less fur on her ears and an ache in her bones when it rained. But she was whole. That evening after the bar closed and Mia was asleep in the back room, Rhea went up to the observation deck alone. She stood looking out at the stars. The void tide was gone, but the universe was still vast and dangerous. There would be other storms, other failures. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small communication crystal. It was Falari tech, old and dormant. She had kept it wrapped in cloth at the bottom of her bag for 5 years. It was a direct line to the Elder Council on her homeworld. She turned it over in her hands. For years, she had been afraid to use it, afraid to hear them confirm her exile, afraid to hear that she was forgotten. But now she wasn't afraid. She had saved a station. She had defeated a conductor. She had found a family. She didn't need their forgiveness anymore. She didn't need their permission to exist. She activated the crystal. It hummed to life, glowing with a soft amber light. This is Rhea Sable, she spoke into the crystal, her voice steady and clear. Star Listener, Guardian of Drift Harbor. I am transmitting a report on the Neuralis anomaly. I have stabilized the sector. I have chosen my post. She paused, looking at the reflection of her new family in the glass of the viewport, not physically there, but imprinted on her soul. And, she added, I am not coming home. I am already there. She deactivated the crystal and slipped it back into her pocket. She turned away from the stars and walked back toward the elevator, back to the bar, back to the terrible coffee and the silver milk and the man who couldn't cook and the girl who believed in 9 lives. She had work to do. The lucky break needed a new co-pilot, and she had a lot to learn about not burning vegetables. The atmosphere inside the comet's tail had shifted. It was no longer just a watering hole for the weary. It had become a pilgrimage site. A month had passed since the void tide, and the scars on the station were still being welded shut by drones that buzzed like angry hornets against the hull. But inside the bar, the scars were worn with a different kind of pride. Rhea Sable stood behind the counter, but she was not polishing glasses. She was looking at a holographic star map, spread out on the bar top, surrounded by 3 cargo pilots, who were looking at her with the intensity of students before a final exam. You are taking the spinward route to the gaseous clusters, Rhea said, her finger tracing a line through the shimmering blue light of the map. Do not do that. But the computer says it is the fastest trajectory, one of the pilots, a young Terran with grease under his fingernails, argued. It saves us 4 hours. The computer is listening to the math, Rhea corrected her ears, twitching slightly as she tuned into the low-frequency hum of the station's sensors. "I am listening to the song. The gravity wells in that sector are singing in a minor key today. There is turbulence building in the subspace layers. If you go that way, you will rattle your cargo into dust." She dragged her finger to a longer, curving path. "Go through the asteroid shadow. It is quieter there. The resonance is flat." The pilots nodded hurriedly, adjusting their flight plans. Since the duel on the spine, Rhea had acquired a new unofficial title, resonance consultant. Harlan had even joked about printing business cards, but Rhea had threatened to shred them with her claws. "Consultation fee is 1 bottle of top-shelf regulator fluid," Rhea said, shooing them away. "Now go. You are blocking the paying customers." As the pilots dispersed, a small commotion erupted near the jukebox. A group of station children ranging from toddlers to teenagers had gathered in a circle. In the center, holding court like a queen on a throne of stacked crates, was Mia. "Tell it again," a boy with cybernetic implants on his temple shouted. Okay, Mia said, holding up her hands in silence. She was wearing a miniature version of a flight suit that Jonas had stitched together for her, complete, with a patch that read "Co-pilot." So there we were. The bridge was on fire. The badman Cade had a laser sword that was 50 feet long. Rhea sighed loudly from behind the bar. "It was a wrench, Mia. A standard engineering wrench." Mia ignored her completely. "And he shouted, 'I am the king of gravity.' But my mom," Mia pointed dramatically at Rhea. "She didn't care. She jumped 10 miles into the air, did a triple backflip and roared so loud, the glass cracked." "I harmonized," Rhea muttered to herself, wiping down the counter. "And it was a very controlled jump. And then," Mia continued, her eyes wide, "she grabbed the lightning with her bare hands and threw it into the engine kaboom. And that is why the station didn't explode." The children gasped in unison. Harlan, who was restocking the synthale, chuckled. "You have to admit her version sells more popcorn." "Her version defies 3 laws of thermodynamics," Rhea grumbled, though a small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. She looked at her girl holding the audience captive. The darkness that used to cling to Rhea's shoulders, the heavy cloak of exile, felt lighter now. It was still there, a part of her history, but it no longer weighed her down. Later that evening, after the rush had subsided, Jonas found Rhea on the observation deck. It was their spot now. The viewport looked out over the vast, swirling majesty of Neuralis. The planet was calm tonight, the violet clouds moving in a lazy, hypnotic rhythm. Jonas leaned against the railing next to her. He looked better. The hollows under his eyes had filled in, and he had finally shaved the stress beard he had grown during the crisis. "Mia is asleep," Jonas said. "She fell asleep mid-sentence. I think she was trying to tell me how you fought a space shark." "I anticipate that will be in next week's episode," Rhea said, leaning her head against the cool glass. "She has a vivid imagination." "She has a hero," Jonas corrected. He reached into his pocket. "I have something for you." Rhea turned. In his hand, resting on his calloused palm, was a necklace. It was simple, a leather cord holding a shard of crystal. But it wasn't just any crystal. It was a piece of the spine, jagged and raw, glowing with a faint, pulsing violet light. It was a remnant of the void-tide solidified energy trapped in matter. "I found it on the deck after the duel," Jonas said softly. "Cade's crew was sweeping up the debris. I thought, well, usually Falari think broken things are bad luck. But you changed your luck." Rhea reached out her fingers, hovering over the stone. She could hear it. It wasn't singing anymore. It was humming a soft, steady note of survival. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "Turn around," Jonas said. Rhea turned, lifting her hair and the new white scar on her neck, so he could fasten the clasp. His fingers were warm against her skin. "There," Jonas said, turning her back to face him. He looked at the crystal resting against her collarbone. "Good luck. Not bad luck." "I am not used to good luck," Rhea admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the hull to breach." "Let it breach," Jonas said fiercely. "We have duct tape, we have welding torches, and we have you." He stepped closer, invading her personal space in the way only he was allowed to do. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her against him. The height difference was awkward. She was tall and lithe. He was stocky and solid, but they fit together like two puzzle pieces from different sets that somehow made a picture. "I love you, Rhea Sable," Jonas said. "And I don't care if you are an exile, a hero, or a bartender. You are my co-pilot." Rhea looked up at him. Her golden eyes, usually so sharp and guarded, softened into pools of liquid amber. "And you are my anchor, Jonas Reed," she whispered. She leaned down and kissed him. It wasn't the desperate, adrenaline-fueled kiss of the hangar bay. It was a slow, deliberate claim. It tasted of the future. It tasted of home. The next morning, the past came calling. Rhea sat in the communications room of the Lucky Break. The equipment was old, but Rhea had boosted the signal, using the station's main array, a perk of being the savior of Drift Harbor. On the screen in front of her, the static cleared to reveal the face of Elder Varen. He was old, even by Falari standards. His fur was entirely white, and his ears drooped with the weight of 3 centuries. He sat in the High Council chamber on the Falari homeworld, surrounded by the floating stone chimes of the ancestors. Rhea straightened her spine. She had expected to feel fear. She had expected to feel shame. Instead, she just felt impatient. "Elder Varen," Rhea said, her voice steady. "I assume you received my report regarding the Neuralis anomaly." "We did, Listener Sable." The Elder's voice was dry, like leaves scraping over stone. "We monitored the energy spike from here. The resonance wave you created traveled across 4 sectors. It was very loud." "I had to shout," Rhea said dryly. "The station was not listening." The Elder looked at her, his eyes narrowing. "You sent a message saying you accept your exile, that you will not return." "That is correct," Rhea said. "I have found a place where I am needed. I have found a family. If the Council still deems me unfit because of the accident on Station 9, then so be it. I will not beg for reinstatement." Elder Varen let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. He leaned forward. "Station 9, Varen mused. "Do you still believe that was a failure, Rhea?" "People died," Rhea said, her voice turning cold. "A child died. I miscalculated the resonance." "No," Varen said sharply. "You did not miscalculate. You prioritized. The station was collapsing. You had to choose between saving the structural integrity of the habitat ring or saving the command tower. You chose the ring. You saved 4,000 lives." "The child was in the tower. It was a tragedy, yes. But it was not a failure of skill. It was a failure of circumstance." Rhea stared at him. You exiled me. You cast me out." "We sent you away," Varen corrected. "Because you were becoming a machine, Rhea. You were the most talented listener of your generation, but you saw people as numbers. You saw resonance equations, not heartbeats. We sent you to the edges of the galaxy, to the places where life is hard and messy, so you would learn the one thing you lacked." "And what is that?" Rhea whispered, her hands gripping the console. "That one life," Varen said, holding up a single withered finger, "is heavier than a star. We knew Neuralis was unstable. The prophecies of the Void Tide have been in our archives for decades. We knew a listener would be needed there eventually, but we needed a listener who would fight for the people, not just for the physics." Rhea sat back, stunned. The anger flared hot in her chest. They had manipulated her, let her live in guilt for 5 years. But then, it cooled into a strange, heavy realization. If she had stayed on the homeworld in the ivory towers of the listeners, she would never have met Jonas. She would never have looked into the eyes of a human child and felt the universe shift. She would have been a perfect cold instrument. "You used me," Rhea said. "The universe uses us all, child," Varen said softly. The question is, did you learn? Rhea looked out the viewport of the ship where she could see Jonas and Mia playing a game of tag on the hangar deck. Mia was laughing, a sound that cut through the vacuum of space and anchored Rhea to the ground. I learned, Rhea said. But I am still not coming back. We did not expect you to, Vorin nodded. The Neuralis sector needs a guardian, and it seems they have found one. Walk in harmony, Rhea Sable. The Council recognizes your station. The screen went black. Rhea sat there for a long time in the silence. So, a voice came from the doorway. Jonas was leaning there, wiping his hands on a rag. He had heard the last part. The universe exiled you here just so my kid could interview you for the job of mom, Jonas grinned. That is a lot of effort for a staffing decision. Rhea let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She stood up and walked over to him. The universe is dramatic, she said. But the benefits package is acceptable. Life settled into a rhythm. The lucky break was repaired, but Jonas took fewer long-haul jobs now. He mostly ran local cargo between the station and the harvesting platforms, ensuring he was home every night for dinner. Rhea divided her time between the Comet's Tail and the station's ops center, where Celine Ward had begrudgingly given her a desk, which Rhea mostly used to nap on. But the true shift in their universe happened on a quiet Tuesday night, 2 months after the duel. The bar was closed. Harlan had gone to sleep. Rhea was wiping down the tables, while Jonas balanced the accounts in the corner booth. Mia was sitting on the stool, the one that used to hold the silver milk for the ghosts. She was staring intently at a glass of water on the counter. Rhea stopped wiping. Her ears swiveled. She heard it. It was faint, barely a whisper, but it was there. A hum. A resonance. Mia was humming. Her eyes were closed, her brow furrowed in concentration. The note she was producing wasn't a melody. It was a pure, unmodulated frequency. It matched the vibration of the refrigerator unit behind the bar perfectly. Rhea watched frozen. On the counter, the glass of water shivered. Ripples appeared on the surface, forming perfect concentric rings. Then slowly, impossibly, the glass slid 2 inches to the left. Mia opened her eyes and gasped. I did it! Did you see I moved it? Jonas looked up from his datapad. Did you see what? Did you kick the table? No, Mia shouted. I sang it like Mom. Rhea walked over to the stool slowly. She placed her hand on Mia's shoulder. The girl was vibrating with energy. It wasn't the frenetic energy of a sugar rush. It was the hum of a tuned instrument. Mia, Rhea said softly. Do that again. The sound. Mia scrunched up her face and hummed again. The glass shivered. Rhea felt the air pressure drop slightly around them. It was unmistakable. It was raw, untrained and weak, but it was resonance. Jonas, Rhea said, her voice calm but tight. Come here. Jonas walked over, sensing the change in the atmosphere. What is it? Is she sick? She is listening, Rhea said. She looked at her hands, the hands that had held Mia during the void tide, the hands that had channeled the energy of a dying star while holding on to a human child. The transfer, Rhea whispered. On the spine. When I connected to the station, I was holding her. I was shielding her with my own biofield. The energy must have leaked. Imprinted. Imprinted, Jonas looked pale. You mean she's turning into a Falari? No, Rhea shook her head. She is human. But she has been exposed to the raw song of the universe. It has tuned her Jonas. She can hear it now. Jonas looked at his daughter, who was currently trying to make a spoon spin with her mind, and failing. Fear flickered in his eyes. The fear of a father realizing his child is different, dangerous, vulnerable. One listener in the family is enough, Jonas muttered, running a hand through his hair. I have seen what you do on that spine, Rhea. I don't want that for her. I don't want her to be a lightning rod. Rhea knelt down so she was eye level with Mia. Mia, listen to me. This thing you are doing, it is not a toy. It is a very big, very heavy tool. Like Daddy's hydrospanner, Mia asked. Heavier, Rhea said. It can break things if you are not careful. It can hurt people. Mia's face fell. She pulled her hands back. I don't want to hurt people, I just want to be like you. Rhea's heart squeezed. She looked up at Jonas. They exchanged a silent conversation, a debate about safety versus destiny, about protection versus growth. You don't have to be like me, Rhea said firmly. You are Mia Reed. You are going to be whatever you choose. If you want to listen to the stars, I will teach you how to do it safely. I will teach you how to turn the volume down so it doesn't hurt. But you do not have to save the station. That position is filled. Jonas knelt down on the other side. Your mom is right, kiddo. No hero business until you are at least 30, and you finish your vegetables. Mia looked between them. She saw the worry, but she also saw the acceptance. She grinned. Okay, Mia said. But can I still make the spoon wiggle? Only on weekends, Jonas sighed. And never when I am drinking hot coffee. The end of the story did not come with an explosion or a parade. It came on a Tuesday night with a closed sign on the door of the Comet's Tail. The bar was full, but only with the people who mattered. Harlan was pouring drinks. Celine Ward was actually out of uniform wearing a sweater and laughing at a joke Dr. Eris had told. Cade Rowan was there too, sitting in the corner nursing a beer and looking uncomfortable. But present part of the furniture now, a cautionary tale turned reclamation project. Rhea sat on the bar stool, her tail curled contentedly around the leg of the chair. Jonas stood beside her, his arm resting on the back of her seat. So, Harlan boomed, raising a glass. To another year without falling into the sun. To the sun, the room chorused. And to the family, Celine added, nodding at the trio. You three are the weirdest structural anomaly I have ever authorized. We prefer the term dynamic equilibrium, Rhea corrected, taking a sip of her silver milk, which she now drank simply because she liked the taste, not for the ghosts. Tell them the part about the duel again, Mia shouted from under the table, where she was feeding a scrap of ham to a passing cleaning drone. I have told it 1,000 times, Rhea groaned. Jonas, make your offspring cease her propaganda. She's the press agent, Jonas laughed. I don't control the narrative. She is forgetting the important part anyway, Mia said, crawling out and dusting off her knees. She climbed onto the stool next to Rhea, the one that was now hers. And what is that? Cade asked from the corner, surprisingly engaging. She forgets the part where I saved her first, Mia declared, grabbing a mug of hot cocoa. By giving her the mom job. If I didn't hire her, she would just be a boring cat lady looking at dust. The room erupted in laughter. Rhea shook her head, but she couldn't fight the smile that spread across her face. It was true. The duel had saved the station, but the question had saved her. She looked around the room. The warm amber light of the bar. The smell of ozone and cheap ale. The sound of laughter mixing with the hum of the reactor. Outside the viewport, Neuralis spun in the dark, a giant lonely eye watching over them. The void tide was gone, retreated back into the deep math of the cosmos. Rhea closed her eyes for a moment. She listened. She heard the station groaning as it cooled. She heard the pulse of the star drive in the Lucky Break docked nearby. She heard the beat of Jonas's heart steady and strong. She heard the high, chaotic hum of Mia's potential. It was a chaotic, messy, noisy symphony. And for the first time in her life, Rhea Sable didn't want to tune any of it out. She opened her eyes and clinked her glass against Mia's mug. To the job, Rhea said softly. To the job, Mia chirped. Rhea took a sip, the silver liquid coating her tongue. She settled back into her chair, finding her center of gravity, finding her orbit. The exile was over. The listener was home.